Hello and welcome to PM Express Motivational Series. And as you know, all throughout this festive period, the year has ended. We've given you enough bad news. It's time to refresh and motivate your spirits. And I'm here to talk to, a beautiful lady who does not need any introduction at all whatsoever. I can just literally go into the conversation without even mentioning her name, and you will know who I'm talking to. But I'm here to talk on the subject of discipline. Is it at all important? I'm here to talk to Reverend Dr. Joyce Aryee, who is the overseer of Salt and Light Ministry. Now, before I even introduce her, you see, when I was growing up as a kid, and I'm going to confess, I stole my daddy's car in the afternoon, cruising down the estate, driving away. Then I meet Mr. Hammond. He lives miles away from my house. Rolls his window down and tells me, go and park that car now. I turned around and went to park the car in the garage. Till this day, I don't know why I took the car back, because there was no way he could have followed me, but that's how much fear I had in me as a child. Just another adult in the area told me, go and park the car. How did he even know the car was in mine? Obviously, maybe I was too young then. But that's what seems to be missing in today's world. Auntie Joyce.
Nana,
you're welcome.
Good to see you again.
Good to see you.
You still owe me another time together.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and I will promise to honor it.
Wonderful.
But the season is ending, and PM being a 5-day show, I feel I owe it to my listeners, something inspirational, motivational, and impacting into them. And today I'm coming to talk to you about discipline, to find out, first of all, what at all is discipline, Joyce?
When you talk of discipline, you talk of training, you talk of regulating, you talk of controlling, you talk of patterns of behavior, you talk also of sanctions, punishment for not obeying. Mm-hmm. When you told the story and you said that's how much fear, that's the kind of good fear. To know you're doing something wrong, to have somebody tell you to stop doing it, and to actually stop doing it means that you've been raised up well to be obedient to the right things. And I think that's how we should see discipline. But I was just thinking, studying is discipline, isn't it? Sometimes even a subject is called a discipline because it takes effort, it takes time, it takes a control of your own desires and inclinations to actually doggedly follow a certain pattern of study, which is why it's called discipline. Military training is also called discipline, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah. I don't think the sergeant majors are out there to punish them, but they need to put them through some rigors so that their bodies are fit, their minds are fit, they are alert to do their duties very well. So discipline is good, actually. It's very good.
You know what Mr. Hammond did to me? I don't think if a different child was driving through South Odoko today, another Mr. Hammond would dare tell this child that, look, go and park this car. Because even though I knew Mr. Hammond because I grew up with his children, he didn't know me. And he doesn't know my dad. He wasn't my dad's friend. But he just clearly looked at me.
A child misbehaving.
And tells me off. I obey. But it won't happen today.
It does, but perhaps not frequently enough. Because I still, roll my window down and tell people who are speaking on the phone and driving, stop breaking the law. I do that. And a few times they say, yes, madam. Maybe it's the way I say it. Mm-hmm. But you see, there are many times when we can, but we feel we shouldn't. And so we don't. But one of the reasons why many of us won't do it is that, you see, living in South Odoko estates, it was just a few families. As you said, you played with Mr. Hammond's children. Even though Mr. Hammond was not your dad's friend, he saw himself as your dad's peer and felt that what he would do for his children, he should do for you, because you are as important to him as his own children are. And that's an attitude. It's an attitude. I know that these days, because of cosmopolitanism, nobody cares about anybody else, and it's not very good. What we need is a society where we all raise one another.
But Joyce, doesn't it make us too timid? You know, that sort of...
No, that's what I said. It's a good fear. Why would you be stealing your father's car? That's what you said.
No,
you used the word stole.
I mean,
Right.
I borrowed without permission.
You did not borrow without permission, stealing. That's what I used to tell my son. If you want something, ask for it. You take it without asking. It's as good as stealing, because whatever it is not yours.
Yeah.
And if you do it in this house and I don't say anything, you go and do it in somebody's house. And that, would be tantamount to stealing. So timidity comes with maybe the mode of punishment that goes with disobedience. And we need to be careful, because you have to raise children to know what is good and what is bad. One of the things I used to say all the time was that lying is the basis of so many bad things. And so I didn't countenance lying. And I used to say, if you tell the truth, the worst thing you'll do is I'll probably scream at you or, spank you a little. But you make it worse when you lie. So in raising our children, in dealing with peers and colleagues, it is the value system that should undergird our behavior. That is what we should be doing. So when we're talking discipline, we're not talking punishment.
No.
We're really talking about creating a pattern of behavior that strengthens a community, strengthens a society, strengthens a nation. Why do we talk about corruption so much? Isn't it because there's a breakdown in discipline? I'm employed to take certain decisions. Why should I ask you to, put some weight on it? I am paid to do that job. Now, if I were disciplined, I would do that job and do it very well, and it would enhance the development of the country. So discipline is important. And I would like to see it from the perspective of training people, regulating behavior. It's because of discipline that we have the police. The police are law enforcement. They are not tyrants. They don't just go and punish people. It is, even when they have to mete out some punishment, they explain, why this punishment has to come. You and I know that it doesn't always happen, But discipline should be seen as a way in which you regulate society, you regulate families, you regulate communities, you regulate churches, because there ought to be a certain pattern of behavior that is life-enhancing. If each of us were to follow our own inclinations, I'm sitting here, I want to stretch my hand, your face comes close to where I want to stretch. I should be disciplined enough to know that if I still follow my own inclinations and stretch my hand, I'll be hitting you. So self-discipline should make me recognize your freedom and your right to have your face where it is. So these are some of the things that we should talk about when we're talking discipline. Not the kind of terror that we put in people, almost like making the punishment the dominant issue without explaining the need to have, a controlled, trained, regulated society where patterns of behavior are life-enhancing.
Joyce, if you look at our side of the world, and I'm taking Ghana, probably when I was growing up, basically, and discipline. There was the cane, there was the telling off, there was the regimental rule. If I flip the coin to, say, the Western world in the UK, the average child at my same age wasn't told off as much, wasn't caned as much and everything. Now we flip, a few decades now, and, my peers or just above me are the ones who are in offices now. And the amount of corruption and the story we hear does not reflect the upbringing we got. If I go back to the UK and you see in the offices the efficiency and everything, you wonder, they were not caned as much, they were not beating as much. So why are they behaving like that?
They were trained to recognize right from wrong and to know that there is actually a consequence for doing what is wrong. Mm-hmm. So things were explained to them, and this is what we really must do. When you're training people, when you're talking to people about the correct patterns of behavior, why, you behave in a certain way because you consider the justice and the freedom and the rights of other people just as your own. Mm-hmm. Then you see that it becomes a national psyche. A national psyche. Mm-hmm. And so people behave like that. It's not that there's no corruption in the UK or in the, but they know the consequences. Whether you are the president or you are the smallest fry on the block, you know the consequences. I mean, how often have we not heard of scandals that have cost people their jobs and so on? I mean, even if you take the Queen of England, she's not immune from the sanctions that come with bad behavior from even her children and grandchildren. And the sanctions are sometimes social opprobrium. That the society would raise its voice and speak against some behavior which actually reflect on the fact that you did not raise your children well. So I think abroad, a lot of these things happen. It's been embedded in the national psyche, the systems. The systems go with regulations, and the regulations also go with their own sanctions. Because and people recognize that.
Whereas in our schools there was caning and go and weed and go and fetch water, in their schools there were no caning and weeding and fetching water, but they seem to turn out.
Well, there wasn't any water to fetch.
The tap was running.
The tap was running. There wasn't any water to fetch. But the penal system was as much, especially in boarding schools and so on, so it's not as if they never went through that. I mean, how many years ago did the British penal system, become so liberal? But also, I mean, look at what is happening also in Europe. I think that, consequences. Yes, generations. You see, what is important, and this is what I would draw along, discipline is important.
And at what time do you start?
You start from when the child is very small. Very small. For example, children, babies, they are tyrants. Babies are tyrants. If you let them have their way, they will scream their way through your life. Everything they want, they will scream. And if they know you are going to run and do it, they will scream. Babies need to know that after you have been fed, you have been burped, you're supposed to lie down, not be carried. And sometimes you have to allow the baby to whimper a little, and not feel obligated to go and carry the baby and so on. You see, of course, a few people say, oh, wicked mother, and so on. But that's good training. Because the child must come into the world knowing that the world is not a population of himself or herself. He or she has to live with others. Right from a baby. They also have rights. They also have needs. And she or he should learn to live with a community. This is where patterns of behavior, good patterns of behavior become important. So value systems become important. Discipline has to go around with value systems, norms, mores, and so on. For example, respect is good But respect must start with you're respecting yourself. You must respect yourself enough to know that somebody else requires respect. So it is not fawningly, showing that you respect somebody when you yourself don't respect yourself. So when we're being raised, we should be told about the importance of having self-respect, which then must be carried over to other people. The elderly may not always be right, but at least there are things that they have passed through that we have not passed through. Why would a parent, for example, decide in the name of allowing the child to have his or her own space, leave the child to go near burning hot water, boiling hot water? Well, why would you do that? I mean, that is not love. That is wickedness. Because you know that fire is very attractive. Children, the glow is also attractive, And sometimes even water boiling or soup boiling and so on, it makes some music and it's very attractive. But you want the child to remain healthy. And so sometimes when maybe you have not been looking and the child is close to it, you snatch the baby. It might cause some pain. But it's a good discipline because eventually it saves the child and yourself also from damage, some of which may not be reparable.
So I'm going to take a break here, and when I come back, and teacher said about values, so I just want to find out, as a Christian, Muslim, or whatever faith you are, at what point do you start teaching your child that faith? Do you let a child grow to, let's say, 12, 13, when they can make their own mind and then decide, well, that I want to follow your steps or I don't want to follow your steps? At what point do you start putting that discipline in your offspring? Stay tuned, we're coming back. Hello and welcome back, and today the topic is discipline. Are we losing it? Is it still there? Has it changed? The principles are the same, the values have changed. What at all is it? Because you always hear adults saying, oh, in our days we were more disciplined than today. So I'm here to talk to Auntie Joyce on this matter. But before we went to the break, I wanted to know, Auntie Joyce, at what point do I start teaching my child that, listen, because I am a Christian, these are the values you follow? Or let's say if I'm a Muslim, so well, you can keep eating pork until you are 13 and then you decide whether I'm not going to eat pork again, I'm going to follow your faith. I mean, how does it work?
See, I'll speak from the Christian perspective.
That's fine, yeah.
Christianity is not a religion. It's a way of life. And so if you take it as a way of life, at what stage do you deny your child the values that go with your way of life? So right from the beginning, you see, your Christianity undergirds and defines your behavior, your moral values, your other values, your work style, your relationships. That is what your Christian faith ought to do for you. So if that is the case, then there's no time when you are not a Christian.
At every given time.
At every given time, that's what you are, because everything you do is defined by the values of the faith. And so that's what you share with everybody around you. Your home, your workplace, your friends, everything. Now, the thing is that if you take a Muslim, for example, they don't eat pork for a reason. So you'll just have to share it with your child, the reason why you don't eat it. And rather wait for the child to get to a stage and say that I do not want to do it. But not to let the child know it and hope that later on.
They'll come back.
Yeah, no. So that's not right.
So, okay.
So you start, it's a whole value system that you pass on, you impact your children with. And you talked about, have we lost discipline? Again, it depends. What are you looking for? But I do agree with you, though, that, even the way we drive just shows we have no discipline. We do not care for one another. Because it suits me, I'll just go. Whether what I'm doing infringes on your rights, I don't care. And that is a very, very bad trait. that we've developed over the years. I think that part of it is because we become so cosmopolitan, nobody knows anybody, you know. And so it's like you can do certain things and get away with it. Up till now, people who live in smaller communities, even within urban centers, if you take people who live in a compound house where there's more vibrancy, not a compound house where everybody goes to work and they come back only when they're going to sleep, but a compound house where there's activity during the day and so, you would find that the behavior is different. People are more caring of one another. So when it starts raining and your things are on the line and I'm at home, I would take off your things from the line because they shouldn't get wet, you know. Yeah. So when we live in smaller, more caring communities, then our social behavior is more reflective of our understanding that we belong to each other. We need to look out for each other, you know. We are supposed to think the best of each other. When we are thrown into the sea of, you know, nothingness, then nobody really cares. And that is what is happening. But I think that we need to put some checks and balances. Look at the carnage on the roads.
It's too much.
Yeah. And this is because people want to speed, they want to break every rule, and so on. They drink and they drive. Some of them are tired. They are tired and they should be resting. Oh, but they need to go and come back and so on and so on. Sometimes it is us who are in the vehicles who even tell the driver, hey, why are you going so slowly? Don't you know, you know. So these things are there. But at the same time, let's face it, the fact that you and I are talking about discipline indicates that we know it is good and we need to maintain it and work at it.
The other thing also, do you find that the more we get quote and unquote educated, the more we want to bring our children as American, as Germans, as Swedish, where our culture is not very much in there, you know, so...
And we don't even know their culture either. That is, so we're lost.
So we
both ways.
Yeah, I think if it's also having an effect on us.
You know, culture is so dynamic, and no one is insulated from the culture of another. Especially now that we live in a global village, we live in a digital divide, you know, the digital age, where what happens in Indonesia is seen almost immediately. If you remember Hurricane Haiyan, the moment it hit, you and I saw it.
Watching it live.
Yes. And so there are things that we would affect one another with. But the thing is to take the best of the culture we are imbibing, even though wrongdoing is so loud that people are more likely to be affected with the wrong, you know, than with the right. Because everything that is right has to be systematically, doggedly pursued. So you would find that I don't see any reason why I should raise my child as a Swede when I'm not Swedish. Except I find some distinctive, wonderfully good traits. Then I can tell my child that, you know, the Swedes do this and that and that. It's a wonderful thing. And if we add it to our own way of doing this and that, it will enhance our lives. You see? So you can't, you know, ignore what is happening around the world. But I think that's what I talked about, self-respect. You should be proud enough of who you are. Being Ghanaian is wonderful. I mean, we have some very good values. You know, we still are a community.
Let me ask you, Joyce. I mean, as a Ghanaian, growing up, you know, children do house chores in the house. And I used to be very angry at mom. I was going to use a stronger word. Be very, very angry at my mom. That even though there were house helps in the house, I still had to do house chores.
My mother told me that the house help was for her. not for me.
And it used to really, because I knew, some of my colleagues also had house help, and the house help did the jobs that I was doing.
You're a better person now because you can do many things.
Yes.
If you have to live by yourself, you can manage. You won't cook water and get it burnt.
No.
As some do.
I'm a good cook, actually.
Some people,
I'm a very good
when
cook.
they put water on the fire, it gets burnt. Because they don't even know at what stage the water has boiled and they have to take it off. When they are cooking eggs, they cook the shells and the eggs together, even when they are frying it. Because they never got taught.
But see, Auntie Joyce, is that our culture?
You see, every society passes on good behavior to the other. That's how learning gets done. Learning is not when you go to the classroom. And so you'd find that when children are growing up, amongst themselves, even when they are barely 4 years old, they can say, we're playing mama and papa, isn't it? Mm-hmm. They've been watching what the parents are doing. Sometimes they even raise their voices at each other because that's what they've seen in the house. And you find a girl barely 3 years old whose mother wears high heels. And the child will feel quite confident to go and wear the house. The boy too will go and take the father's hat and get lost in it. Mm-hmm. So instinctively, we teach one another. And that's why in Ghana, for example, as it was in other societies, history was oral. It's what you heard and you passed on and so on. So what we do at home is supposed to reflect a quality of life which is good enough for others to learn from.
See, but in most affluent homes today, 6-bedroom, all air conditioning, plenty cars, stay in your room, you have your TV, your Game Boy. So
they don't even know how to socialize. They socialize only on the internet. Bad conversationalists.
Being that we are in 2013, is that not how you're supposed to raise a child today?
No way. Facebook is not a friend. I mean, relationships about people. I need to touch you. I need to really look into your eyes and see your needs and so on. I mean, people are meant to be together. Facebook, good, it can do certain things. But people even Facebook enough to go and commit suicide. So terrible things can happen. But the thing is, you see, a child is not an island, can never be insulated. Now that child is going to grow up and become a decision maker. If for nothing at all, is also going to be an adult, married, going to be a parent. Why don't you help the child to know what to do? If you insulate the child from everything which makes running a good home possible, what are you doing to your child? You are actually destroying that child. And that is why in some homes, you'll find that the boys, because they are never taught to do anything, consider their wives as their house helps. And the wives are to do everything. I know some people, they work, the wife works, but he says, well, as for me, I don't eat food that's been put in the fridge. Well, if you married me, I'll say, well, you'll have to learn to do it. Because we're both working. The thing about food is that it has to be healthy, isn't it? Now, if I'm working and you're working, and we have a refrigerator, we know how to properly preserve food. So I buy mango and it's very ripe. I should throw it away because you don't want mango that has come out of the refrigerator. I do a gravy. I should throw the rest away because the next day I have to do some more. I mean, let's face it. But this is usually because they've been spoiled rotten. Some people are even so nasty to house helps because they are indulged. Parents just look on the way the parents scream at the house helps. In my home, the house help, you have to call the house help either auntie or sister because it's not your classmate, older than you, and working, not a slave, working. So it's not as if, you're better than the person. The person is also working for a living. and making the life of your parents better and yours too. So you have to show some respect to them. This is how we should raise our children, because if we don't, then what we're going to do is to create self-centered, selfish children who grow up into self-centered, selfish, rotten to the core adults who only live to pursue their self-interest and nothing else. We're already paying a price for some of it. You don't want it to get worse, Nana, do you?
No. Now I'm going to broaden the discipline into, and this is very technical because, and I'm going to do two subjects, as in time and attitude towards work.
Yeah.
Now here we are, we ourselves, who are supposed to teach this time and attitude towards work, are seriously handicapped in it. Where are we going to find the balance to teach this time and attitude towards work?
We have to start with ourselves. The thing about discipline is that it starts with you, not the next person, you yourself. I've often said that when you're organizing a program, you have to be there early. And if you give the time, you have to be there. I know at state functions and other functions like church functions and so on, we adulate, maybe the archbishop, bishop, something. And if the person is late, we have to wait until the person comes back. I don't think it's right, because most of people who get to that stage are also disciplined, and they would like to see the right things happening. There was one time when there was a function and a minister was supposed to come. The minister was last minute asked to represent the head of state at another function being held about the same time. Now, the organizers, where I was, should have recognized that there is no way the minister representing the head of state could leave until the program was over.
Yeah.
And so to think that because she had said she would show up, you were going to wait until the program finished was bad decision. And it put the minister also in a bad light, because the minister would definitely not want to keep everybody. Anyway, things had not been well organized, so nobody had been told to stand by. But as organizers, you should even have made sure that people within the minister's office and those around would know that if anything happens, somebody would step in. So sometimes we are the ones who cause the problems. I've been to many functions where the head of state is expected, and the handlers and the protocol people will keep ringing, oh, the place is not full, so wait a little. The place is not full, so wait a little. But that is wrong, because the rest of us who are sitting waiting think that the head of state is the one keeping us waiting. Yes, when he's being told by his protocol that don't come now. But what our leaders should also do is to tell the protocol people, even if there are 3 people, I'm coming right away. Because I'm going to let people know that when we say it is 9 o'clock, it is 9. And that's when we start. And if it's 2 people, I, the leader, I'll be there. Whether I'm the minister, whether I'm the reverend minister, whether I'm the head of state, I will be there. And let the rest come. Do it twice, 3 times. Everybody will start going to programs on time, because they know that the one who's going to lead it will be there on time. There was an incident during the time of His Excellency President Mills, when a group was organizing something, and they took the International Conference Center, used the main auditorium. Now, the main auditorium will swallow 500 people easily and make the room look as if it's not full.
Sure.
But go to one of the side rooms and 300 people will be an overspill.
Yeah.
So if you really want the place to be packed, go to the smaller room. It took some time to get them to appreciate that. Anyway, the president sent a message that, look, I'm coming, and when I come, I'm starting. Some diplomats came because he hadn't started, went back. By the time they came back, the president was in. They couldn't have access. And that sent a good signal, even though the program started late.
I'll take another break here, and then when we come back, we are still talking discipline. But we are in 2013. Have the values really changed? I mean, can we still have the same discipline as in 1970 or 1940? Or is there a different sort of discipline for the new age child? Stay tuned. Hello and welcome back. And we're looking at modern day discipline. Now, once upon a time, if it was Christmas, there was a few palm trees here, the old Piccadilly. You string it, a bottle of Fanta, the whole family shares it. But today, you look at Christmas, and I'm sure most parents wish it had postponed it or the government had cancelled it, because it is a huge bill and a burden on most parents. That's Joyce. A discipline of Christmas, if I may say.
The discipline of Christmas, you see, the reason for Christmas is that God has given us a gift of His Son to be our Savior. So you commemorate this gift of God. Of course, people, take advantage. And I think they will do that for anyway. These days, you see even the home and everything, MTN is doing it, this guy is doing that, Vodafone is supporting this. So the commercialization is real. But the issue is, how does a parent learn to manage with the resources that they have? I still buy the Piccadilly.
I see.
And share. Maybe my grandchildren don't know how to string, but they love it, they eat it. Of course, now I can buy a few colored balls and string it around the house, and maybe cut a tree and wrap something around it. But when I couldn't, I didn't. When I couldn't, I didn't. So I think that part of the discipline is for us to know that we don't all have to be like Nana, and that you could be yourself and still enjoy the thrill, the joy, the sharing of Christmas. If you have one chicken, why don't you cook that chicken and enjoy it with your family? You don't have to have a ram. You definitely don't have to have a turkey, And so, or if you don't have a chicken and so on, and you have an confirm, it's as good as that. Yesterday I had an confirm curry, and it was so nice. So, part of the discipline is the controlling of our own inordinate desires to be like other people. And that's part of discipline also. Greed will go away if we disciplined ourselves better. Because it is greed that will drive us to look for what we don't have, to pretend to our children that we are the bosses in our offices when we are the messengers. Being the messenger is also good. Without you, the work will not go on. But why do you go and take a briefcase and pretend as if you are the chief executive when you're not? So when it comes to maybe even your child visiting you in the office, you're dodging. Because the child or the wife thinks you are the boss of the place. So it starts with our own inordinate desires and ambitions. Contentment is something that also comes with a disciplined life. In the case of a disciplined life, you say that life is self-controlled. The life knows when to do the right things, when not to do wrong things.
Is discipline dynamic or it's fixed regardless of the time?
Even values, you see, there are certain things. For example, when I cut you, whether you live in the 21st or 22nd century, when I cut you, blood will ooze. Now, the change may be that I can spray something that will close the wound, part of technology. You see? Okay. So, how to deal with your wound may have improved, but cutting you and you bleeding is still the same. So values like respect, goodness, good work ethics, good governance and so on, these are fixed. So you can't say that because you live in the 21st century, you cannot, you shouldn't do the right things because those right things are not good. They are good. If you drive a car and hit a person, whether it was in the 19th century or the 21st century, it's bad. You see? Mm-hmm. So values do not change. Maybe our response to some of the values is what we must look out for. And that is what we must never think that respect has changed. It hasn't changed. Maybe when we were growing up, when you were speaking to another, you had to put your hands behind you because that showed respect. Now you can still be very polite and not put your hands behind you. Mm-hmm. You can be very polite because politeness is also in your demeanor, in the way you respond, and so on and so forth.
On subject of putting your hands behind you, with the amount of teenage pregnancy and children being abused, is it that misconception of obey an adult, go when you're sent, you have to go, and so the adult then takes advantage. Look, bring the sweets to my room, and then
that also. So you see, you use the right word, taking advantage of, which means that there are adults who are totally indisciplined and foist themselves and their inordinate desires on unsuspecting, innocent children, which is also bad, and that is why they get punished.
So should we teach the children to be a little bit, no, I'm not coming in there,
Oh, but don't you know children who will say, my mother said I should not come into your room. My mother said I shouldn't go into anybody's room. Mm-hmm. Even people living in compound houses, they will say, my mother said I should not go into anybody's room. Mm-hmm. And that's it. Unless you tie the child and drag the child there, the child will say, my mother said I should not, my father said I should not come to your room. And so we still have situations where many children are taught, again, the discipline of good behavior, of discernment, the discipline of discernment. Mm-hmm. You can tell when an adult wants to take advantage of you. And if your mother says, don't eat food from your neighbor's house, then if the man even has cocoa, which you love, you won't go and eat it because you've been told that it is not good. And this is where we come back to, at what stage do you pass on values to your children? Now, these days, we are all working, and sometimes we go to work and we don't come back early. But even that is not reason not to pass on good values.
But then the house help will be passing on values.
Should be, if the child knows.
But then what happens is the house girl or the house help, if I may say, has come to the house, with her own values. Yeah. And the parents are both out.
So definitely.
So she
some
has
of us,
to now...
some of us, our children are brought up by television and house helps, Mm-hmm. But these are all things. You see, parenthood is also a discipline. Parenting is a discipline. It's a responsibility. And even if you stay away from work for a long time, this is where, again, couples should balance their lives. Two couples should not take jobs that take both of them away from the house until 9 o'clock. It shouldn't happen. At the stage when the children are young, one of you would have to take a job that takes you home by 6. Mm-hmm. Now, somebody will say, it's my career. Your career can be put on hold because the children will grow up and will not need you as often. So it's a question also of being disciplined enough to think of the children you have brought into the world and who are your responsibility, and the discipline of raising them well so that they too, who are individuals in their own right, can enjoy life, Not life through your prism, but life as it ought to be. You don't bring a child into the world and then leave the child to the vagaries of, society is not a person. It doesn't have a name. It's usually faceless, Part of teenage pregnancy also has to do with our inability to provide certain activities in school. Children at a certain age, go through puberty, their hormones run wild. You have to help them to manage all these things through sports and activities that actually get their bodies tired and can put their interest elsewhere. You see, these days, sports fields are not there. Sometimes you hear a school and they say, we don't have a football. I said, give me a break. Does the government have to bring you a football? Can't you contribute to buy one football which can be used? So sometimes our inability as teachers, as headmasters, as government to make the right provision. So a child closes from school at 1. We used to close at 4. The afternoons would be spent on gardening and sports. We would close at 4. Long enough to get home and meet our parents who may have been working or something. These days, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, parents are still out. Children are there, only television, house help who probably has been made so docile, even the children can shout on the house help. And then, all manner of things happen. Whether it's in the urban center or in the peri-urban or even in the rural areas.
And when I say school, our education system now is really, really diseducating us. To borrow Professor Nana's words, the schooling system is diseducating us. Yeah. And since we are talking about discipline, and school must have about 60% role to play in discipline, I give 40% to the parents. Yeah. What then do we do?
You see, the school is where you formally learn certain skills. And because skills also have to do skills of reading, writing, arithmetic, life skills, and so on, these all have to do with life. So naturally, value systems come in, and so on and so forth. But the thing is, these days, we have put more value on a paper certificate than on actual knowledge. You see, a school is supposed to give you knowledge which you can apply to life. Now, if you go to school for information, then you'll be able to learn the information by rote, give it back on the paper, walk away, and you have not got knowledge. I think what our educational system should do is to give us knowledge, because every discipline is applied. When you learn mathematics is applied. You learn physics, it is applied to daily life. Chemistry is applied to daily life. Biology is applied to daily life. Geography is applied to daily life. History has an application in daily life. Now, how you combine the knowledge to become a good citizen is what we're looking for. And that is how we must reorient ourselves. It is not just putting children through a mechanized way of giving them information. If education does not help us to be more analytical, to consider that whatever we learned is to be used to turn the country around for our good. If we are not critical thinkers and so on, then we have actually not been educated. We have been schooled, but not educated.
Once upon a time, the teacher would say, go and get me your father. And then I would live in an area where as the student tells the teacher, I am going to bring my father. Yeah.
We had a breakdown in the societal morals some time ago, where a level of, let me put it this way. I think that any society that does not value its teachers is in serious trouble. Because let's face it, if you don't consider me a worthy human being, why do you bring your child to me to teach? So, it's a contradiction in terms. Yeah. But right from decision making, we must put great value on teachers, because after all, they are the ones who give us the knowledge that enables us to become doctors, engineers, TV personalities, and so on. The work they are doing, maybe you will never be able to give them money terms of value for work. But life is not just about money. Sometimes other kinds of motivation, even recognizing that they are the pillars of development, is something important. Now, if they are the pillars of development, then in a way, you don't want those who want to teach to feel that they are not as good as those who want to do medicine. Because sometimes that's what we do.
Yeah.
That if you do medicine or you are an engineer, you are better than a teacher.
First-class citizen.
But who taught you what led you to become the engineer? Yeah. Even the engineering, who taught you? So there's somebody who knows better than you and taught you to get where you are. And we must place the right value on teaching so that those who go into teaching also are going there because it is a profession which they consider worthy and worthwhile. And they have pride in it because, frankly, to actually add knowledge to another human being's life is the greatest thing anybody can do for that person. You know, as we sit here, you and I, it's teachers who have even helped us to articulate. They taught us, and they taught us to string sentences together. They taught us to read so that we can get more vocabulary. They taught us so many things, you know. Mm-hmm. So it's very important that we put good value on teachers and make sure the best people go into teaching. There are many ways in which we can do that. And I know countries where from time to time they've taken a stand. Right now in the United States, there's like a going back to the teaching field or something. There's a program they're doing where less endowed areas, you know, are being helped. And how are they doing it? They're going to schools like the Ivy League schools. Mm-hmm. And they've worked out a system where if you go back and teach, you know, there's some rewards, you know, for maybe a scholarship or entry into some profession or something like that. And a lot of people are doing it with pride because they're making them feel that they're giving back to society, to people who need their services. And a lot of people are taking 3 years out to go and do this. So when you have a crisis, you have to take a decision. In education, we do have a crisis. And I think it's time to take a decision as to how we can turn the crisis around. Because without education, we're nothing.
And it's, I think, showing in society. But going into 2014, just before I run up, you know, what should every parent do with regards to discipline to their little ones?
Parents should recognize that the love they have for the children should make them want the children to be good citizens. And so they have to impart to them good values, good, you know, moral behavior patterns. They have to teach them the value of human beings and what they can do. That's what love is about. And let me talk about what God says in the book of Hebrews.
1 minute, then I run up.
The book of Hebrews says that God disciplines us because he loves us.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
And in fact, one says that when God disciplines us, it's because he wants us to share his divine nature.
I think that sums it all up.
Yeah.
So you discipline your child because you love the child. So don't spoil the child because you love the child, but discipline. Thank you very much for watching PM Express Motivational Series. And thank you very much, Auntie Joyce.
Thank you very much, Nana. You owe me now too.
Yes.
This is not quite complete, and the other one was not quite complete.
So my producers are here, and they are hearing me, so we too. But thank you very much for tuning in, and until I come back to you again, I say I'll come back tomorrow to do it all over again. So thank you very much,
Nana.